An old man and his wife were driving down the road, and after a while he realized there were flashing lights behind him. I'm sure many of you have had that feeling before. And he realized he was getting pulled over, so he pulls off to the side of the road, and the policeman walks up to him and walking up to the car, asks him to get out. Go ahead and get out of your car. The old man gets out, and the police officer says, do you know why I pulled you over? The old man said, I actually have no earthly idea why you pulled me over. The policeman said, well, you were speeding. You realize how fast you were going? He goes, well, it couldn't have been more than the speed limit. I mean, I never drive faster than what the posted speed limit says. The officer said, well, you were actually doing 90 in a 65. And he goes, that's impossible. There's no way. I mean, I always drive the speed limit. I never go over the speed limit. You ask everyone that I know, they'll tell you that I drive the speed limit all the time. So the police officer, noticing that his wife was sitting in the passenger seat, leans down, looks through the window and says, ma'am, is that true? Does he always drive the speed limit? She said, no, officer, he is pedal to the metal. He has a lead foot. He speeds everywhere he goes. I can't believe he doesn't have more tickets. It's amazing. He's always driving too fast. So the police officer shakes his head, starts writing out the ticket. Said, sir, I also noticed that as I was pulling you over and asked you to get out of your car, I didn't notice you take your seatbelt off. So did you even have your seatbelt on? He said, sir, I always wear my seatbelt. I mean, 100% of the time. I am click it or ticket. That's my motto, just like it's your motto. I always wear my seatbelt. So he leans down. He says, ma'am, is that true? Does he always wear his seatbelt? She said, officer, I'm surprised we still have seatbelts in the car. He should have cut them out a long time ago. He never wears his seatbelt. He refuses to put it on. I remind him every time we get in the car to put his seatbelt on. He absolutely refuses to wear that seatbelt. So the officer shakes his head, goes, okay. After a minute, the man kind of gets over to the car and he looks in, he tells his wife, he goes, and woman, you be quiet now. I'm telling you, I don't want to hear anything out of you again. You're not helping this situation. This is between me and the officer. You need to just be quiet and keep your mouth shut. The officer said, ma'am, does he always talk to you like that? She said, only when he's been drinking. I think a lot of us have a hard time telling the truth. We have this propensity to bend the truth just like the old man, or we're not even sure. We think we know what we're doing a lot of times, but we think it's okay to manipulate the truth, to bend the truth just a little bit here and there, and that's what we're talking about today. There was also a preacher who was headed to his church on a Sunday morning, and he looks over, it's a beautiful day like today, and he sees this golf course off on the side, and he thinks, man, it would be a beautiful day to play golf. And you know what? I mean, I'm getting older. The church has grown quite a bit. We have a huge staff now, and I've never called in sick all my years of preaching. I'm just going to call in sick this one time. I have my clubs in my car, just happened to, and I'm going to go play golf. So he does. He picks up his phone, he calls in, and you know the drill of calling in sick, right? I don't feel so good. I can't make it today, as he calls his associate pastor. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll fill in for you. And so the preacher goes out to play his round of golf, and an angel up in heaven notices what's going on, and he turns to God and he said, we should really do something about this guy. I mean, here he is lying about being sick just so he can go and play golf on a Sunday morning. It's supposed to be the Lord's day. God, we should really punish him and make him have a bad round of golf. And so the preacher gets up to the first tee, and it's this long par 4, and he has to go over the water, and it would just be a miracle to even get close to the green. And he hits his first shot, and it just sails. I mean, it just goes and goes. He clears the water, it hits the ground, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And he's watching it, and it goes up on the green, and pretty soon he can't see the ball. He thinks, what happened? And he drives his cart over the green, and then he finds his ball in the hole. And the angel goes, you just gave him a hole-in-one, God. What are you doing? I thought we were going to punish him. God said, I did. Who's he going to tell? I think we have this same type of tendency in our own life to fib a little bit here and there, to turn the truth. We talk a lot in gray areas, and our culture encourages this type of behavior. And it's not just our culture, it has gone all the way through time, and it was certainly true in Jesus' day. And so that's really what we're looking at today as we continue this series in the Sermon on the Mount. It's called New Heights. We talked about how it's because Jesus keeps raising the bar for us. He talks about how these old regulations and old rules, it's not good enough. We need to raise the standard and raise the bar. And if you'll remember a few weeks ago, he mentioned that murder is wrong, but he said, you heard it said murder was wrong, but it's really before that. It starts in your heart. When you hate somebody, when you're that angry at somebody, you've really already created murder. It has already planted a seed in your life and in your heart. And then he talked about adultery in the same light. He said, you think that adultery and the physical act of adultery is what's wrong, but really that starts in your heart. It starts with a seed that grows and blossoms when you allow it to be part of your life. And so he has begun in the last few sections of these chapters to raise that bar. And so here he starts off with lying, and he starts off in a similar way in chapter 5, Matthew chapter 5, and we're in verse 33. He says, again, because he's continuing the same line of thought, again you have heard it that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. So let's get a little bit of cultural background as we dive into this. Lying was a huge deal in Jesus' day, kind of like how big it is in today's modern society. In fact, it might have even been bigger in Jesus' day. It was so prevalent in his day that they actually had to take oaths just so you would believe what they were saying. And it was as simple as you ask somebody what time it is, and they tell you the time, and they have to take an oath just so you believe that what they're saying was true as they respond to your question. In some ways, it is the same today. It's hard to believe people. We have to read between the lines, right? We can't just listen to what they're saying. We have to read into what they're saying to get to the real, actual truth. Remember days long ago, 50 years ago or so, when people would do $1 million deals over a handshake and a cup of coffee, right? But now those days are long gone. Now we bring in lawyers, and the lawyer's sole job is to draw up a contract on one side, and then on the other side, he has a lawyer. What's his job? To look for all the loopholes in that contract, right? To make sure there either are none or there's the right one so we can get out of it when the time comes. Lying is so prevalent in our society, just as it was then. In the Old Testament, it was the same thing. You had all these rules that were set up just so lying could take place. An oath, giving an oath to back up your word was put into part of their daily instruction and part of what they needed. It's in Exodus, it's in Leviticus, it's in Numbers. They all have instructions about how to give oaths so that you know that your word is good. So God allowed oaths under certain circumstances. And so it's in those books in the Old Testament, but we're going to look at one verse that sort of sums it all up. In Leviticus 19, verse 12, it says, do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Now, we usually apply this to not swearing, which is one side of it, and not to bring God's name into swearing, and again, that's partly true. But it's also using God in an oath. We use this today, too, oftentimes, when we say, by God, I will do this, or my God, or I swear on the Bible, or I swear to God, I swear to heaven. We say these things, and that's what God is talking about, that we need to keep his name out of it. Even more so, we have a tendency to fudge a little bit here and there. You know, we get that word from, there was a captain named Captain Fudge. And you think I'm making it up, but I'm not. That's it. That was his name. His name was Captain Fudge, and he had this tendency to fib, to not tell the full truth, to lie, to manipulate the truth. And so his name became synonymous with lying and not telling the whole truth. And people would say, you're telling a fudge, and you're fudging. And now we even still have that phrase today where we fudge numbers. And you thought it was just a phrase, but it actually came from a person who was so bad at it that it became his name synonymous with it. And so we're the same way. We have a tendency to fudge. We have a tendency to manipulate, to tell little white lies and think that that's good enough, that that's close enough. And we hover in these gray areas. By the time of Jesus' day, the religious leaders who took on the role of lawyers, they would try to find loopholes in God's word, and they had for many, many years. And so what they did was they came up with a ladder system for how to tell an oath. And so they said, well, when you tell an oath, you've got to start with lower level oath telling. So you say, well, I swear by the earth. Because the earth, that's not swearing by God. You're swearing by the earth. And so you say, if I'm lying, then may my crops not grow. And so I swear by the earth that what I'm telling you is true. And then when that's not enough, then you say, well, I swear by the hair on my head. So you'll know that I'm lying because my hair will fall out or it'll turn gray or something along those lines. Or if that's not enough, then you say, well, I swear by the temple in Jerusalem. Or I swear by the gold in the temple. Or I swear by God. And then that was the top one. That was it. You couldn't go any higher than that. But that was the ladder system that the priests had come up with. And so what they were really doing in trying to find this loophole in God's old law is that they were basically legalizing lying. Because then what you would do is it would still be a lie, and you would just up your oath to get people to believe what it is that you were saying. So what did Jesus have to say about this? So he brings up the old covenant. He says, you've heard it said, do not bring God into the lie. Do not use God's name. But I tell you, he says in verse 34, but I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. So he says, essentially, these loopholes that you think you found, they don't really work. They're not working for anybody. And he says there's no way to make an oath. Nothing. There's no way. There's nothing you can say to not drag God's name into it. If you swear by the earth belongs to God. You swear by your head belongs to God. If you swear by the temple, it's his temple. It's where he lives. If you swear by the gold, it's his gold. Certainly if you swear by him, everything you swear by, everything you think is possible to find these loopholes, you're bringing God's name into it. So stop. You can't make an oath without including God in it. So he says your loopholes don't work. So Jesus gives this simple instruction in verse 37. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Or your version might say, let your yes be yes and your no, no. He says this is the new bar. Here's the new standard, the new height that we're attaining to. He's challenging all those who hear his word that day and those of us here today to be people of our word. Not dealing in white lies, not dealing in the gray areas, not dealing with fudges or half-truths or manipulations, but let your word be your word. He's saying that we are to say what we mean and mean what we say. And people like that stand out, don't they? In our society today, people like that absolutely stand out because we're different than everyone else around us. There was a 7-year-old named Tanner Muncy who was a little leaguer from Florida. He was in Sports Illustrated a few years ago. Tanner was playing first base one day, and a little boy hit the ball and was running to first, and Tanner reached out to tag him, and just barely missed him, caught all the wind but didn't quite get him, and the umpire kind of missed the call and called the kid out. And Tanner walked up to the umpire and said, no, I didn't get him. I missed. So, whatever you want to do with that. And the umpire actually on the field reversed the call. He said, okay, the kid's safe. Why would he lie to me about missing? So, he's safe. A few weeks later, Tanner finds himself as the runner. And he actually kind of gets caught between second and third, and there's a kid chasing him with the ball, and he slides back down at second, and the kid reaches out to tag him, and he's called out. And Tanner sort of dejected and sad, and he's got his head hung low, and he's walking back to the dugout. And the umpire who made the call happened to be the same umpire who a few weeks earlier Tanner had told him about, told him that he missed the call. And so he said, "Tanner, what's wrong?" He saw that he was dejected, and Tanner said, "He missed me. He didn't get me. I mean, it was close, I give you that, but he didn't get me out. I was safe." So the umpire reversed the call again. You can imagine how mad the other team was, right? I mean, you made the call on the field. That's the call that stands. As the coach approaches him, he goes, "You don't understand this kid. Tanner, a few weeks ago," and he explains the whole situation. He said, "Because he didn't lie then, why would he lie now? And I'm going to believe him." People like that stand out. That's what we're called to be, people who are different. People who don't deal in these half-truths and lies and little white lies, but that go above and beyond, and they stand out in our culture of lying and deceit. But we're just accustomed to the lying, aren't we? It's just kind of the way it is now, is how we feel. You watch commercials on television, or you talk to any salesman, and our whole goal as we listen to them or watch these infomercials is to read between the lines. What are they not telling me? How good could this product possibly be? And their whole job is to tell you a half-truth. Their whole job is to manipulate you into purchasing. And if any of you are like me, you've bought more than one thing from some sort of infomercial. And how many times have those lived up to 100% of the promises? Has anyone ever bought anything on television that has lived up 100% to the promises? 100%? Wow. Well, I don't want you to tell me the product. I'll buy it. But most of the time, those products, their whole goal is to get you to buy them, and they not live up to the promises. And so that's what our culture is built on. And you go, we call used car salesmen, right? We call them that term. That's their job, but it's also a term that we use for them because they're trying to get us to buy this car that's maybe not as good as they say it is, and they're just trying to sell us on it. It's just part of our culture now. Products that just don't deliver. I did a little research. I found a couple of products that are really in line with this. There was one product called New England Oysters, and then when you turn the label over, it says from Thailand. That's not really New England Oysters. Then there was Louisiana Hot Sauce. You turn it over and it says made in Mexico. So as the lawyers are approached and you ask them, how can you sell a product that blatantly is wrong? New England Oysters, but they're from Thailand. Like, how can you do that? What they say is, their loophole is, well, we're trying to provide the essence of a New England oyster. So they get away with it because of the essence of what they're trying to get across, some sort of message that they want to portray in their product. And so it's the essence that becomes the loophole. But we are called to bypass the essence and go straight to the truth. We are to always tell the truth 100% of the time. So here's the truth about dishonesty. The truth about dishonesty is, first, dishonesty undermines our relationships. Whether it's our relationship with others or our relationship with God, certainly, dishonesty undermines every bit of that. There's no foundation of trust. The real indictment is not that we take an oath. That's not what Jesus is upset with. That's not what he's griping about, that we would take an oath, but that we feel like we have to take the oath because our word's not good enough. That's what is upsetting. We're so conditioned in believing that the essence of truth is good enough. As long as we get close, as long as we portray as much as we need to, as long as our half-truths work out enough to get us by, then we're good. But really, we're called to stand out and to be different from everyone else. So the second thing about dishonesty is contrary to the nature of God. It's contrary to his character. That's not anything close to what he is. And he wants us to be who he is. And so when we deal in half-truths and white lies, we are falling far from his own character and his nature. In John chapter 8, Jesus is talking to those of us who would refuse to repent and follow him. And he reminds us that we come from a world of deceit. And he tells us as long as we remain in this realm of the devil, we will not be able to hear the words of truth that come from him. So John chapter 8, verse 43, here's what Jesus says. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to the father, the devil, your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Jesus says the devil is the father of all lies. It is who he is. That is his character. That is his nature. So when we tell little white lies, little deceitful tidbits here and there, when we deal in those gray areas, we are speaking the devil's language. We're reflecting his character. Whose character would you rather reflect? That of God or that of the devil? When we lie, we're speaking the devil's language. Every deceit, every exaggerated story. If we were to take a poll here today, I'm sure that we would all have the desire to speak rightly 100% of the time. If I were to just ask you, would you rather speak always truthful or always dishonest, you would say always truthful. But it's just so easy for us to slip up, isn't it? Statistics tell us that we will, each one of us, hear 300 lies per day. Okay, it's really 200, not 300. But see how easy it is to just slip that out there? You wouldn't have known any different. But I was lying. It was 200. And that each one of us will tell 4 lies per day. That one's the true number. 4 lies per day. We deal in the lies of the devil. We tend to speak his language when we buy into what culture tells us is okay, or what we just mess up with. Sometimes it just sort of slips out. We don't mean for it to. Maybe we even think a little bit later, why did I even say that? I completely messed up. And sometimes it's really, really hard. So here's our challenge this morning. And it will have a trickle-down effect in your life. Let's be people that keep our word 100% of the time. And our promises, even when they seem insignificant. Even when it seems insignificant. If we let the small things go, then we erode the foundation of truth in our life. As we let those little white lies creep back in, those little half-truths. Think back to the companies like Enron and WorldCom and Lehman Brothers and those types of companies. If you had gone to their CEOs and their higher-ups long ago when they first started out as a company, and you said to them, okay, you're at point A right now. How would you like to be at point Z? You know, where they ended up, where they fell because of all their lies and all their manipulations. So you start from the very beginning. How would you like to be here? I bet every one of them would go, no way. That's not who I am. That's not the kind of company I'm trying to start here. I don't want to do that. But if you go to them and you go, okay, you're at point A. What about point B? You know, we just fudge a number here and there, just a little bit. Then they kind of buy into it. You go, okay, now from point B to point C, another number or two. Point C to point D, well, we've got to fudge our taxes. We've already fudged these other numbers, and so now we got to move things around a little bit here and there. And then all the way through the alphabet till you get to Z, and one day they wake up and go, whoa, what happened? How did we get here? We started off good. We had all these good intentions. And all of a sudden, here we are, destroyed, destitute, because of our lies, because of our manipulations of a system. The little things tell the story of who we really are. If we want rock-solid relationships and to reflect the character of God, then we must make truth our goal with zero tolerance. Our goal is to always be truthful. Luckily for us, there is one person in the history of mankind who was completely truthful 100% of the time. His entire life lived. He kept every promise. And because he kept every promise all the way to the end, we have forgiveness and the opportunity to start all over again. So my question to you today is, let's first of all make a commitment to be truthful 100% of the time, even in the little things. And then right now, to seek forgiveness for the times when we don't, for the times where we've messed up in the past, and to draw on his strength that comes from knowing him and to have this intimate relationship with the one who kept all promises, Jesus Christ. That's our call. That's our purpose, to live with him in truth and in love. Let's pray.